vicious Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua are mobbing border crossings at El Paso, Texas in an attempt to break into the U.S. before Trump takes office.
So a new kind of crisis is emerging at the border, and it's a crisis of time, something the gang members who haven't yet made it into America are running out of. Because President Trump has promised that when he takes office, he's going to finally secure the border and deport those who pose a danger to our country, leaving criminals with what may be their very last chance to enter America and make their way to a sanctuary city. And unfortunately, they're making the most of it.
The Venezuelan prison gang known as Tren de Aragua is reportedly attacking border agents with knives, attacking them with tire irons. This seems like open season on Border Patrol agents. This is frightening.
The NYPD's chief of detectives says undocumented criminals are carrying out retail robberies and committing crimes on scooters, snatching people's jewelry, watches, and cell phones.
They are a violent gang. They are well structured, and they're here to make money. They're going to identify states that are out there that they can go to, and they can raid ATM machines, do extortion. They don't care. They see the U.S. as a big money pit.
They went into migrant shelters in New York City, for example, and they started to recruit more members. These migrants had settled in sanctuary cities, and they found their way there because they knew that it would be an easy place to start to unleash crime.
When we do make arrests and we're able to charge them on 4, 5, 6 incidents, when they go before a judge in New York City and their arrest record is run, they show no prior criminal history. They're released on their own recognizance.
So members of the notorious Tren de Aragua gang are trying to enter the country before Donald Trump's second term starts. But what nobody's talking about is that even after Donald Trump secures the border, the process of stopping these gangs from committing more violence in America will only just be getting started. And that process will be made infinitely harder by the backwards, unsafe policies of sanctuary cities like New York, which put law-abiding immigrants and asylum seekers in danger, allowing gang members wanted by federal authorities to hide in plain sight, access city services, and even live down the hall from women and children inside city-funded asylum shelters. On top of that, over 200,000 asylum seekers have come to New York during this crisis. And although the majority are here for the American dream, these gang members have an entirely different dream. And this humanitarian crisis has been the perfect pathway for those with a dangerous criminal past to not only enter our country, but to get started doing two things: recruiting new members and exploiting those closest to them, a huge problem for the law-abiding immigrant communities many of them are trying to blend in with, where they go on to involve themselves in every type of crime you can imagine. And that brings us to the real reason why the fight to stop these dangerous criminals very well may start on day one of Trump's next term, but might not be over on day number 2. By making their way to sanctuary cities, these gang members are now entrenched in places where they benefit from legal protection. And since they can make money exploiting backwards laws that protect criminals of all backgrounds, sanctuary cities like New York enable their efforts to traffic everything from people to products along the streets and sidewalks of our middle-class neighborhoods, which, as you're about to see, has allowed them to create a self-sustaining criminal empire so ruthless it's beyond anything our country has ever faced. This right here is the entrance to the Port Authority bus terminal, where every week hundreds of people still arrive in New York seeking asylum from either the southern or the northern border. However, because New York is America's largest sanctuary city, any criminals who find their way here can hide in plain sight, as our laws do not allow police or the local government to turn them over to federal authorities, which essentially makes this the best place to be a criminal in America. But any criminals who aren't in America yet, they're running out of time, because in a couple of weeks, the border's going to be closed for good, and now is their last chance to enter the country.
According to the New York Post, at least 20 TDA members tried to force their way into the U.S. last week, attacking border agents with knives, tire irons, and the new violence is happening just miles from the scene of this migrant riot back in March. These migrants were...
So a few things are apparent from this. First, the criminals know that right now the border is at the weakest point it's gonna be for the foreseeable future. And all the troops and security down there, they're fighting crime and border incursions with one hand tied behind their backs. And adding to the urgency the criminals at the border now face is the fact that recent assaults on the border have been met with low or no consequence. For example, some of the rioters who stormed the border a few months ago ended up being gang members, but they all had their cases dismissed. But in just a few weeks, a similar event might not be handled the exact same way because the new border czar says there's going to be a massive crackdown on any criminal activity in this country related to immigration. But the current border security we have, if you even want to call it that, is signaling to criminals one message. And sadly, that message is that it is now or never if you want to try to make your way to a sanctuary city. And the New York Post is reporting that these assaults on the border are a regular occurrence now. Gang members are trying every single day to get through the border and make their way into this country. And they're reporting that this always takes place in the wee hours of the morning around 3 a.m. And before we get into how successful these incursions might end up being, it's important to understand that these gang members are not stupid. The border is massive and it's understaffed, underpoliced. These criminals know it. And the reason this Tren de Aragua gang is growing so rapidly in America is because these are not your average criminals.
Tren de Aragua started in the Tocaron prison in Venezuela, where the gang took over, driving out the prison guards. Tren de Aragua gang members posed as asylum seekers at our southern border. They came across with giant waves of migration.
So these gang members attacking our border, they came from a prison in Venezuela, which they took over. Is it any wonder that they're now taking over apartments and businesses across the country? And is anyone really shocked that a group of criminals this dangerous wouldn't try to come to a place where they could commit all sorts of crimes they can't right now, wherever it is they are, while benefiting from legal protection and a justice system that releases those who steal and assault people? The fact of the matter is that a progressive sanctuary city is a magnet for criminals. And if you're a criminal who's in the country without permission, this place takes it one step further, because if you get arrested, the NYPD is banned from sharing your immigration status with federal authorities. In fact, our city kicked federal authorities out of all of our jails so that when a dangerous individual the feds are looking for is in custody, they can be released, and the government's then got to track them down again, all on their own, putting people at risk for no reason. Yet, for some reason, the activists here who continue to defend these sanctuary policies do so saying that they're great for all immigrants, when now we're learning that the opposite of that is actually true.
They went into migrant shelters in New York City, for example, and they started to recruit more members. These migrants had settled in sanctuary cities, and they found their way there because they knew that it would be an easy place to start to unleash crime. And they knew that if they had been arrested, they would also be released likely.
So what's going to shock most of you is New York City's right to shelter rules that guarantee anyone a place to stay just for asking. Since this is a right that anyone who finds themselves in New York has, the city does not do any background checks, and that's how you get gang members living down the hall from families with little kids in taxpayer-funded facilities like the Roosevelt Hotel, where gang members have been located. That's a 1,000-room facility. It's the flagship shelter, which is also the asylum seekers' welcome center. Yet from the moment they enter the country, there are gang members in that facility already who might be looking to recruit them or exploit them, because that's what this gang does. To make matters worse, these gang members have also been busted smuggling weapons inside these facilities. How they got weapons in a gun-free zone is something no progressive politician will be able to tell you, but they smuggle them into the shelters in food delivery bags because apparently those don't have to go through metal detectors. There's a great write-up on exactly how this smuggling ring works and how our shelter system has basically been turned into a set of facilities that cost hundreds of millions of dollars and harbor criminals, giving them a free place to stay while they plan on what crimes they're going to commit next. And now that we know all of this and that it's happening right here in New York City, anybody who truly cares about the safety of immigrants should be on board with a deportation plan that's going to get rid of criminals and gang members. But not everybody can agree on that for some reason.
They are a violent gang. They are well structured, and they're here to make money. They're going to identify states that are out there that they can go to, and they can raid ATM machines, can do extortion. They see the U.S. as a big money pit.
Yeah, these gang members, they're not here for the American dream at all. They may be dreaming all right of opportunities to take advantage of people who live in America, but these folks are bad news, and something needs to be done to get them off the streets. Because after they make their way to this country, that's exactly where they go, and you can see the evidence of their crimes all over the streets of our middle-class neighborhoods where they are running open-air theft markets where people who may not be there because they want to be there are selling things out of briefcases that men unload from vans and hand to them. And as the commenter just said, these criminals, they do this specifically in sanctuary cities. Our laws and policies are what they need to commit their crimes. And that's why they're so intent on making their way to places like New York while they still can. They're not going to sneak across the border and then hide in a place like Florida after Trump's president. They're going to make their way to a blue state and a blue city that's going to help them live out their criminal fantasies, which reveals that progressive backwards justice-related laws only help the bad guys. But now that we know this gang is deeply infested in certain parts of America, how likely is it that the incoming president can get rid of the bad guys before they do any more bad things? Some think the new president's plans will be carried out almost immediately and the effect will be a resounding success, while others are decidedly less optimistic of how quickly this new security initiative will be able to take place and worry that it will take a long time to get rid of the thousands of gang members who could be hiding in our country. Either way, one thing's for sure, as this is taking place, the number of criminals who realize coming to New York is going to be a good thing for them is going to go up, not down. So for the longest time, the narrative of America's migration crisis has been that since our borders are so large and so vast, and since we've got two of them, one with Mexico and one with Canada, that completely securing them is pretty much impossible no matter who's president. However, after the incoming president threatened tariffs against Canada and Mexico if they didn't crack down on illicit activity taking place along our borders, many people were surprised that they immediately offered their assistance, revealing that it very well may be possible to secure the U.S.'s borders, both of them. However, many are wondering what's going to happen now that so many criminals have made their way to sanctuary cities like New York and are doing their best to remain undetected. How long is it going to take to detect them and get rid of them?
President Trump will probably on day one declare some sort of emergency based on the Immigration and Nationality Act, which would allow us to basically close the border and not allow anybody to come in until we achieve operational control of the border. So right now...
So if the borders get secured, and that happens on day one of the next administration, it's not just that people won't be able to enter the country the way that they are now. No, they also won't be able to secretly leave either. So anybody who's not in won't be able to get in, and anybody who's here might be very hard for them to just walk out. And that's a big problem for many of these gang members, because if they're in America and the federal government closes the door and starts looking for them, if they're caught, they could lose their freedom, something they have now. And if they're caught inside the country and deported, then they face a 10-year ban on re-entry, something that doesn't happen if they leave on their own. And this may be why some people are choosing to quote-unquote self-deport ahead of the next presidential administration. But not all criminals can leave the country and then go to a place where they're better off. This might be their last option. Especially if their goal is to make their way to the US and then exploit others and live a life of crime. They're going to be able to do that here better than they will in most other places, that's for sure. And since these individuals don't want to be found, and since they're doing everything they possibly can to blend in, it may take a very long time to locate everyone who might be a danger to others, especially in sanctuary cities like Chicago, where the mayor has promised to fight back against any deportation agenda. And although we have yet to see how that situation plays out, the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, has promised that he's going to cooperate with the federal government because he understands that gang members roaming the streets of a city that can't lock them up or arrest them is a bad deal for everyone.
Anybody who's arriving at the border and saying that they're concerned that they're going to be persecuted in their home country, they're going to be allowed in. They're not going to be detained. They're going to be released in the community. So I think President...
So what many people forget is that this entire asylum crisis came about because of the elimination of Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. This was a policy that said people can seek asylum in America, but while they do it, they've got to remain in Mexico. However, at the time it was ended, many people thought that it was a controversial and unfair policy. And prior to 2022, many Americans never imagined a situation where hardened criminals would escape from a prison and then plan deliberately on entering this country. And you've got to ask ask yourself, if there's a group of people out there who assault others and smuggle weapons and take advantage of people who've just come here, tricking them into doing things that are very, very dangerous, how are they not a terrorist organization? They're terrorizing this country.
A gang, they've been noted to be in at least 19 states all across the country. Your thoughts?
Couple of points. Agree with Nicole, it's a terrorist group. What does terrorism mean? Not only does it cause great havoc and damage, but it scares everyone. So it creates a whole sense of unsafety around.
So it's not just that these gangs are terrorizing the country. The sad thing is that since they're trying to blend in with immigrant communities, those are the communities that are negatively affected by their presence first. And sanctuary city laws and policies that harbor these criminals and protect them, those are the worst policies immigrants could ask for. Also, designating Tren de Aragua a terrorist organization might help with deportations, which Mexico now says they're on board with in some cases. But even though Mexico shares a border with the US and says that they're going to help secure it and they're going to accept some people back who've crossed into our country from their country, the idea that they're going to take back somebody who is a known gang member and a known threat, we'll have to see if that actually happens. Either way, gang-related activity taking place in America, that's a bad deal for just about everybody who's not a member of that gang. If you're here and you're trying to obey the law and this gang comes around and God forbid they're getting special protection in a place like New York, they're gonna get away with things that are just unheard of. And that's what's happening. Do you think it's a good idea for them to be designated a terrorist organization, this Tren de Aragua that's smuggling weapons into shelters that have small kids living in them right here in New York? Will that help secure our cities? Let me know. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.